Let's talk about Bitcoin. It's created trillions of dollars in value, which is just mind-boggling when you stop and think about it. Because it has no CEO, no headquarters. It doesn't produce a single dime in cash flow. So how can something that's missing all the usual signs of value be worth so much? That's the big puzzle we're going to unpack today, and believe me, the answer is way more fascinating than you might think.
So let's just get right to it. The big question is, what actually gives Bitcoin its value? It's definitely not a simple answer, and it's for sure not what we're used to seeing in traditional finance. To really get it, we first have to wrap our heads around just how radically different Bitcoin is from, well, pretty much everything that came before.
Okay, look at this slide because it really lays out the paradox perfectly. You buy a stock, right? You own a tiny piece of a real company with buildings, products, and profits. You buy a bond. You're basically lending money to a government that promises to pay you back. These things make sense. Their value is clear. But Bitcoin? It has none of that. No dividends, no physical assets, no government backing it up, and no one steering the ship. By every textbook definition, it shouldn't work. And yet, here we are. This is the mystery that's had modern finance scratching its head, and to solve it, we need to step outside the box and into the world of game theory. The key to solving this puzzle is what we can call the security engine. Now, this isn't some machine humming away in a server room. It's a brilliant economic and, well, a game theoretic flywheel. It's this incredible self-reinforcing system where thousands of competing people, all just looking out for themselves, end up building this unbelievably secure and valuable network. And to understand this engine, we have to think a little bit about game theory. Don't worry, it's not as complex as it sounds. It's just the study of how smart people make strategic moves. In the world of Bitcoin, you've got a few main players. You have miners, who provide the security, you have users and investors who create demand, and you even have potential attackers who might want to mess with the system. Bitcoin's value literally pops into existence from the strategic dance between all these groups. It's all about a system of perfectly balanced incentives. So, here's the most important thing to get. Bitcoin's value isn't just there. It's not a fixed number written on a sticker. Instead, it's the dynamic result of this powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. The value and the security of the network are totally intertwined. One builds on the other, over and over again. Let's break down exactly how this cycle works, step by step. And boom, here it is. This is the flywheel in action. It all starts with the price. When the price of Bitcoin goes up, the rewards that miners get for processing transactions become worth more in real money. So what happens? More miners jump in, plugging in more powerful computers to compete for those rewards. As a result, the network's total computing power, what we call the hash rate, goes through the roof. A higher hash rate makes the network insanely secure because it becomes incredibly expensive for anyone to try and attack it. That rock-solid security makes the whole thing more trustworthy and attractive to new users and big investors, which, you guessed it, drives up demand and pushes the price higher. And just like that, the loop starts all over again, getting stronger and stronger with every single cycle. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some fringe idea. Major players like Fidelity Digital Assets are all over this. They call it a reflexive property, which is just a fancy way of saying the system feeds on itself. More security brings more demand, which brings a higher price, which brings even more security. It creates this powerful network effect where it becomes a winner-take-all game. I mean, why would you store your money on a less secure network when a more secure one is right there? This is the engine that drives Bitcoin's value from the inside out. Okay, we've just peeled back the first layer of the onion, the core theory of how Bitcoin actually creates value. If you're finding this breakdown helpful and you want to see more explainers just like this, do us a huge favor. Take a second to like this, share it with someone who might get a kick out of it, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. Oh, and definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support is what lets us keep making this stuff. All right, so that game theory flywheel is a super powerful idea, but for a long time it was just that, an idea on a white paper. An engine needs a spark to get started. So how did Bitcoin go from being this cool thought experiment to something with actual real-world value? Well, the story, believe it or not, starts with pizza. 10,000 Bitcoin. Today, that number is almost hard to comprehend. It's such a massive amount of money. But back in 2010, it was just numbers on a screen. It was an experiment that only a handful of cryptographers and programmers even knew about. It had no market price, no real-world use. It was totally stuck in a classic chicken and egg problem. And that is what is so wild. On May 22nd, 2010,
Those 10,000 bitcoins were used to buy 2 Papa John's pizzas. This was it, the first ever documented real-world purchase with Bitcoin, and it became the tiny spark that lit the fuse on the entire value engine.
Now, to really grasp why this was such a big deal, we need one more idea from game theory, the Schelling point. Imagine you and I have to meet in New York City, but we can't talk to each other to decide on a place. Where would you go? Most people would probably go to a famous landmark, like the clock in Grand Central Station. That's a Schelling point. It's a natural meeting spot that everyone just kind of agrees on without talking. Before the pizza transaction, Bitcoin had no Schelling point for its value. The pizza purchase was a stroke of genius. It broke the deadlock. Think about it. No store would accept Bitcoin because it had no value, but it couldn't get value until a store accepted it. So this guy, Laszlo Hanyaks, who was one of the early miners, he just made a public offer on a forum. He spent 10,000 of his Bitcoin, which was less than a week's worth of mining for him, to show his own confidence in the project. And when another user, Jeremy Sturdivant, accepted the deal and ordered the pizzas for him, he didn't just deliver dinner. He proved to everyone watching that a path from Bitcoin to real stuff, and therefore to real money, actually existed. That one single trade that everyone could see created the very first Schelling point, a common anchor for Bitcoin's value. And just like that, the flywheel started to spin.
So, that little pizza spark has now grown into a global fire. The exact same game theoretic flywheel that got started with 2 pizzas is now playing out on the world stage, between entire countries. We're moving from a simple coordination game to a full-blown geopolitical one.
Now this is fascinating. This table lays out a massive shift in how nations think about power. For the last century, power was all about holding another country's debt, and it was all backed up by institutional trust and, having a big army. But we live in a digital world now, where you can be attacked through cyber warfare or cut off from the global financial system with sanctions. So a new model is starting to take shape. This new model focuses on assets like Bitcoin, whose security isn't based on trust, but on what's called thermodynamic irreversibility. That's a super fancy way of saying it's secured by the raw physical expenditure of energy. You just can't fake the physics. It's all about having your own cryptographic autonomy, about what some are calling the sovereignty gap.
And this isn't just a theory anymore. Just look at the data. Countries are already stacking Bitcoin in different ways. The US has grabbed the largest known stash through asset seizures from criminals and has even set up a formal strategic Bitcoin reserve. El Salvador is famously just buying it on the open market. And then you have a country like Bhutan doing something totally different, using its natural hydropower to mine Bitcoin as a state-owned enterprise. The strategies are different, but the trend is undeniable. Sovereign adoption is happening, right now as we speak.
Even the big global institutions that were skeptical for years are being forced to change their tune. In 2025, the IMF made a huge move. They officially classified crypto assets as non-produced, non-financial assets. I mean, wow! This single decision puts Bitcoin in the same bucket as things like land, water rights, or oil reserves. It's a massive admission that this is a totally new kind of digital commodity, a foundational asset that you simply can't ignore anymore on the world stage. But the story isn't all a straight line up. Not at all. While Bitcoin's design is brilliantly decentralized, the project itself has faced some really serious challenges, both from the inside and the outside. The simple question of who's in charge has blown up into a full-on governance crisis, and it's revealed some deep, deep tensions about what Bitcoin should even be. So here's the tricky part. For all the talk about decentralization, the actual development of Bitcoin has been, in reality, pretty centralized. And this all came to a head during the block size debate. On the surface, it sounded like a boring technical question. Should we make the blocks bigger to fit more transactions? But it was actually a philosophical war, a war over the soul of Bitcoin. Should it scale up to be a super fast, cheap payment system like Visa? Or should it stay a bit slower, a bit more clunky, but be the most secure, decentralized settlement layer possible? The whole debate showed that a very small group of developers had huge power over the future of the protocol, and it created this major clash between the network's decentralized dream and the centralized reality of its leadership. And this quote just absolutely nails it. The early hope was that technology could just get rid of politics, right? That pure code could replace messy things like trust and governance. But what the block size war proved is that you can't escape human power dynamics. The governance of the technology is itself political. Who gets to make the rules? Whose vision gets to win? These are not technical questions. They are fundamentally political ones. So while this internal philosophical war was raging, another huge force was building on the outside: global regulators. These two charts from a joint report by the IMF and the Financial Stability Board are super revealing. They show that both the big economic powers on the left and the other nations on the right are all getting their act together. Just look at the blue and green bars. Overwhelming majorities either have rules in place or have a plan to get them in place. The whole wait-and-see era, it's over. A coordinated global regulatory wave is coming, and it represents another powerful centralizing force pushing on this decentralized network. Which brings us to this final, really provocative question. Is this what Bitcoin's future boils down to? A fundamental battle. On one side, you have its core design, this beautiful, decentralized, autonomous network that runs on code. And on the other side, you have these powerful centralizing forces of human nature, the internal politics of its own developers and the external politics of global regulators who want to tame it and bring it into their system. The ultimate value, and maybe even the entire purpose of Bitcoin, might just depend on which of these two forces wins out.